Thanks, Jim. It's true. My remarks will exceed his, but not by much.
I meant in value. Not in value.
General Bartell, Mr. Shaw, distinguished guests, and honored cadets who are receiving the Marshall Leadership Award. What a pleasure it is to join you today and to spend just a few moments with you and reflect on why you're here this week, and maybe to give you a little update from my perspective and my foxhole on what's going on in the United States Army during this time of war. First of all, since I'm a University of Tennessee ROTC graduate class of 73, let me see, is there anybody from Michigan State here? All right, because I wanted to talk with them about that basketball game a few weeks ago. I wasn't praying hard enough on that one. I've got Pete Sniffen, who's riding shotgun here with me. Pete, wave your hand. You probably saw him walking there, a pretty tall guy. He's a VMI grad, class of 85, and so he's glad to be home to his alma mater here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Bring you greetings from the Army staff. Washington, D.C. is a very busy time of the year. Right now we're fighting for dollars for the future of the Army. I won't get into all of that one, but that also, Art, you would agree, requires much prayer as we look at the future shaping of the military for the hybrid and the future threat that exists out there, because it's still a very dangerous world. I also bring you greetings from our Chaplain Corps. I don't know how much you know about it, but we have about almost 3,000, short of 3,000 chaplains in the Army Reserve, National Guard, and Active Army. From all faith groups. When you see an Army or military chaplain, they represent some 202 denominations around the United States. So it's a very diverse group of chaplains. We have Roman Catholic priest, Orthodox priest. We have rabbis, 23 rabbis. We have our first Buddhist chaplain, by the way. And we have all kinds of Protestants there in the array. And with one mission in mind. I don't know if you know what the mission of a chaplain is, but hopefully you've learned, or have some of you, many of you in this room with combat patches, hopefully you have seen the importance of chaplains in the military. When a soldier's wounded or dying, they are told that they cry out for about 3 or 4 things. They'll cry out for their mama. They'll cry out for the medic. They'll cry out for their drill sergeant. In many cases, they'll cry out for their chaplain. And we have great chaplains who are here to support you as we lead and serve our soldiers to ensure that every soldier in our ranks has the opportunity to exercise their freedom of worship, which is guaranteed under the United States Constitution. So thank you for this opportunity to be with you. You know, there's never a greater need for strong leaders than there is today. And I looked at your agenda. I wish I could stay with you, but Washington's calling me back for some other things. And but you're going to have some great seminars that perhaps reflect and challenge, support, reinforce leadership in the United States Army. Very, very, very important. I have to tell you that in about 2 weeks, I'm going back to my alma mater. I haven't been there in almost 30 years. Going to speak to the ROTC cadets, and I think back to my days on college campuses in the late 60s and early 70s. It was a different United States at that time. Our national will was questioning our involvement in a war that took 58,000 killed in action. We got to the point at University of Tennessee in the Bible Belt there in East Tennessee, near the Smoky Mountains, that we could no longer even wear our ROTC uniform. Because of the threat of violence or mocking by even our fellow students, who threw everything from rotten eggs to talcum powder to ketchup to try to disgrace this nation's cloth and to give their opinion of a very unpopular war. We had our challenges back then in that Army, but I'll tell you, there were some great leaders that saw us through that difficult time. We have a great military, and today probably there are no greater respect or standing, I think, than any citizen in our great nation. As I travel and see soldiers throughout airports throughout the world, I see just the greatest respect that is rendered to those who are wearing our nation's cloth. And so you should be very proud, privileged, that you're even called, I believe, by Almighty God to put on our nation's cloth and to serve the greatest men and women that I have ever seen in my 37 years in the United States Army, and also just since I've been here on this earth. But we need great and strong leaders. The fact that you are sitting in this room, 270 cadets out of all the thousands of cadets in ROTC programs around our great country, says something about your leadership. Someone, your professor of military science, perhaps one of your instructors, someone has recognized that there's something special about you and that you have been called to be not just a good leader, but to a great leader. Why do we need great leaders in the Army today? Well, because we're a nation at war. Last month there was a very significant milestone that passed in the military. We surpassed the days of our boots on the ground in Vietnam. We have now been at war longer than any time in the history of our nation. We are at war longer than any nation that has stood up a volunteer army. It's almost 9 years. 7 years ago, I'm not sure if Art was there, but many of you perhaps were in OIF 1. We were opening up, this was the days, by the way, before Burger King and satellite TV and running water and some of those other things that y'all complain about when your sheets aren't clean or the laundry messes up your ACUs. That was before those days. I think back to those times and the great things that have taken place over these almost 9 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's been costly. I keep up with those casualties. Every one of them means something. Some loved one is receiving the news that their son, their daughter, their husband, their wife, their child has been killed in action. Over 5,400 killed in action since 9/11 and the beginning of the war in Afghanistan. We still have one missing in action in Afghanistan, PFC Bergdahl. We have 30,000 who are wounded in action, over 1,500 amputees in our ranks. And there's hundreds of thousands of our soldiers, and perhaps some of you who are prior service in this room and faced the carnage and the destruction of war, who are having those invisible wounds of mental, emotional, and spiritual scars from the sights and the sounds and the smells of war.